Thank you all for attending. This is Village Laguna's August general meeting with two really interesting topics. We're going to start, however, with Tony, and because I've asked her to say a little bit about what was going on with the city council and her censure. So Tony, thank you for joining us, and you'd kind of update us on the facts.
Oh, I'm very happy to be here. And my concern is I could talk way too much.
Oh,
So
don't.
if you would let me know if, give me the hook. The probably the most interesting thing in the past year or so was the censure that happened at the meeting where Bob Whalen introduced a censure. And it was clear towards the end of the meeting that the reason he did it is because Peter suggested it. And he actually acknowledged that, which I find interesting because I always saw the council as just Bob and whatever he wanted. I never thought that Peter was reaching in and running things, but he seems to have quite an influence. I want to speak briefly about the Brown Act and how the city violated the Brown Act. I think we all have the understanding of a council member can only talk to one other person, because if there's a third, then there's the ability to pass anything you want. But it's a much bigger and broader thing. And what happened is, in any closed session, you have to post the agenda. And at the beginning of the closed session, if there's anything to be added to the agenda, two council members and the city attorney scurry over to the council chamber and announce anything that's being added. The agenda for closed session back in June basically started out as an update. And an update can never be in a closed session. An update is for a city meeting, public meeting. So the question was, who prepared the agenda that night and said update? Phil would never do that. So was it Sheree, and Phil found out what it was because somebody then changed the title of the item and it became litigation. And in the closed session, the discussion of litigation never, ever came up. All we talked about was the question of lifting the stop work that was imposed that you all know about at the Hotel Laguna. And that is really public information. It was a 3-1-1 vote. I abstained. I should have voted no, but we were scurrying out of the meeting in order to get to the open session in time. And as I was leaving, I said, why isn't this going to the Planning Commission? And then I said, well, no, it'll take too long. I said, well, call an emergency meeting. No, we'll have to notice that. Well, this should be handled by the Planning Commission. This isn't what we do. And then it went back and forth like that. And so when George basically made it clear what the content of the closed session was, in spite of the fact that the city attorney said in the meeting, there's nothing to report. Now, I was sitting watching the beginning of the meeting of the censure, and when Phil was called to talk, his voice was fine, but his hand was quivering. I've never seen his hand shake like that. He knew he was in the wrong. And it all comes down to Rattan and Tucker's finest attorney really screwed up. But I suspect he knew he screwed up, but he's probably done it many times before, but we've never really caught him on it. And it became, to me, very important that this happened. I have what I call a secret Santa, and that is somebody who sends me stuff, and the secret Santa is a general contractor who went into the Hotel Laguna and just talked about, how shoddy the work was and how.
Organize the voice. Oh,
Are we okay?
Someone needs to mute.
Yep. Meryl, maybe you should mute everyone and then people can unmute as we go on.
All right, then I'll unmute Tony. And then Tony, you unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm not mute.
Okay.
Now I'm unmuted. Okay. So a general contractor went in and looked at what went on and in great detail told me all the things that are wrong there. And I am pursuing it with the city manager and the city attorney and the director of community development, trying to make sure that things are done right. For whatever it's worth, this isn't about not wanting the Hotel Laguna to close, because I think probably as a group, there's hardly a group of people more interested in getting back into the Grand Old Lady and making a part of our community. That's not what it's about. But when you have someone who is working with a licensed landscape architect or interior designer, on the license of an interior designer instead of a general contractor, a 3-story building is required to have architectural plans that have been signed off by an architect, and this hasn't happened. There's so many things that are going on, but to take a beam from the lower room, where you go downstairs and you have fun times, and it's not the fancy room, and the fancy dining room is right above us. They took out a support beam there, and it's not like you just take it out and you put it back in, which is what they did. Once you take it out, a lot of other things are required, and it didn't happen. All this other stuff didn't happen, and I had suggested, I'll tell you what I said in closed session. I said, we have to have an engineer look at this. And someone said, well, Mo has an engineer. And I said, no, we want our own engineer. And of all people, this is how long ago it was, John Pedic agreed. So, but we're not getting an engineer's report. We're getting a licensed interior designer. It's very disturbing. But there's so many other fish to fry. Tomorrow night's going to be interesting because we've got Tiamo, and there are all kinds of things coming in about Tiamo. And my question to the city is, can we really buy a property without having an appraisal? And the city came back and suggested that that's all right. And for whatever reason, and then I have an attorney. Some of you are aware of that. My campaign, Eisman for Council, had some money in it, and I've hired my own attorney, and he's confirming whether or not they can buy a piece of property without having finding out from a professional what it's actually worth. We need to have an appraisal. So we'll see if the city is going to require or get an appraisal, which I doubt in short order. But this is kind of the way that things are operating. And I don't have to tell you, I think every one of you in this room know, that things are happening that would never happen ever, that we could ever imagine in the city ever. And we're really lucky to have George there standing his ground. I'm going to not shut up. And I appreciate any ideas that you have, suggestions going forward, or questions about what you see coming up in the future that we need to address. So I'll stop for a minute and take some questions if you have some.
Well, thank you, Tony. We're going to, unless there's some urgent question, I'd really appreciate it if people would just send information to Tony or questions, because we've got a big agenda tonight. And we still want to talk a little bit about tomorrow. Johanna, did you want to speak to I forgot what it was I was going to ask you to speak to. No, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Agenda Bill 12.
Thank you.
And it's kind of a farce. This is the city covering their ass. And I just think that, we need to, they are going to say that they did not violate the Brown Act, but everybody knows they did. It's obvious that they did, but they have an attorney that will do whatever, they ask him to do, and he will, swear to it, and they will, abide by what the attorney says. So I don't know what else to say about that. We will have a letter. I would hope that people would speak to this issue and talk about how not only did they violate the Brown Act, but they actually censored a council member for something that wasn't true. They should be censored anyway. So that's where I am on that. So.
And so hopefully people will tune in tomorrow night, 5 o'clock, and look up the agenda. It's not terribly long. Tony, do you think it'll move through pretty quickly?
I think it'll be really quick. Yeah. And I really encourage people to call in with questions, pointed questions. And it's important that they know that we know.
Yeah.
And the public needs to understand this isn't just about talking to the council, but it's anybody who's listening to the meeting.
They have lost the confidence of the residents. They have screwed up this hotel so badly. And the thing is that, Mo is going ahead, and I understand there's 3 bars and a restaurant. And he's pushing ahead to open this, but he has no plans for restoration of the historic structure. Nothing planned for the rooms. This has not gone to the Planning Commission. The other red herring they have is that the Coastal Commission sent them a letter that it's okay. Well, the Coastal Commission has nothing to do with this, with the interior. The Coastal Commission just has to do with the exterior. So that's a red herring, their Coastal Commission letter. I just cannot believe what the city is doing and how they're doing it. And it's like a mafia organization, I don't know. It's just unbelievable. Anyway.
The Coastal Commission letter doesn't say it's all okay. They have a whole paragraph at the end saying these are all the things we're expecting from the applicant and from the city.
Right, Anne. I didn't mean that. I just meant as far as the interior was concerned. They have nothing to do with the interior. And I really thought that the city brought that Coastal Commission letter to show that, they had given them permission to go ahead. That's the way I read it. But I know, yes.
They represented that that's what it is.
Yes, right.
They also showed the agenda bill from February 25th, which has no validity whatever, right, because it was appealed, so it's canceled. And
unbelievable.
That item was noticed to 100-foot noticing area. So who of all the people who are concerned about the future of the Hotel Laguna, only people within 100 feet of the hotel had noticed that meeting was going to happen.
So perhaps if you want to call in and just ask a simple question like, where are the plans for the rest of the hotel? Have you received those plans so that we know what's going to happen? That would be a good question for someone, brief and to the point. And so, just it doesn't have to be a big, long commentary about it, but that's an important question to ask. Where are the plans that the city said they had to produce?
Right.
And maybe some of the people on the Zoom meeting may not know that Village Laguna sent in a letter that was published in the Indy. But for the city to cure their violation of the Brown Act. So this matter was handled in a closed session, which, as Tony Eisman has said, they decided to lift the stop work order for the Hotel Laguna, a matter that should have been held in open session where the public, Village Laguna, and other people would have had the opportunity to chime in and give their opinions and so forth, and it would have been transparent in the public. And so tomorrow on the agenda, the update of Hotel Laguna is a confession that they indeed did violate the Brown Act, that they did indeed, when they updated the permit, they did it illegally, and they are trying to cure it by doing it in the agenda item tomorrow night. And we ought to hold them to task for that.
Thank you, Gene. That's absolutely true. Okay. I really appreciate those comments, and I hope people will tune in to the city council meeting tomorrow night and say something about you're wishing there would be more transparency, and where are the plans, and why does one developer get lots of special attention and the rest of us do not? Anne?
Yes. I just hope that you also listen to the Tiamo item, which comes on before this item number 12. They're proposing to spend, how much is it, Tony?
2.7.
2.7 million. Is that it? To buy that site, which is totally unsuitable for a fire station. And all the comments that we've been making about all the things that are not right about that site have been discarded by the response to comments by saying, oh, well, we really haven't decided how we're going to use this property. So any of these comments about the fire station are irrelevant at this point. Right now, we're just deciding whether or not to buy it. And that's not really true.
Thank you. And also, we did put on our Village Laguna website a link to the South Laguna Association's presentation. And it's really only 20-25 minutes long. So informative. I really encourage you to take time and go to that YouTube video and learn about, one, is the history of South Laguna, but also the lack of appropriate selecting for the fire station. It's very informative. And thank you, Anne, for bringing that up. Okay, let's move on to our main agenda. Meg Monahan, we're ready for you.
Okay, great. And Meryl, I could share my screen, I would appreciate it.
All right.
Let me see if I can actually do this.
All right. Here we go.
Okay,
Takes a few seconds.
there it is. Okay, I have to move something over here so I can read it too. All right. So this presentation, I'm going to briefly review the new regulations related to defensible space, and I'll be available for questions at the end. And defensible space refers to modifying the space around our homes to provide increased fire access and fuel modification. And I think most of you know, but fuel modification refers to decreasing combustible materials such as plants. So just recently on July 1st of this year, a state of California regulation went into effect. It applies to all properties in the very high fire hazard severity zone, which is shown in red on this slide. And it does not apply outside of the zone. Okay, so I gave you a little more detail here so you can see that over 85% of our city is in that zone. So starting on July 1st, all properties in the zone that are transferring ownership must comply with the defensible space guidelines. The city of fire department has actually filled a new position called the defensible space inspector, who will come on site and certify compliance before the property transfers ownership. And these guidelines also apply to all properties in that zone on a complaint-driven basis. So if your neighbor down the street complains that your trees need pruning, they will need to be pruned to meet this guideline. Laguna Beach is among a handful of California cities that are significantly impacted, and one of a few, and I actually wasn't able to find another one, though they may be out there, that has its own local fire department. Some of the other communities are Rancho Palos Verdes, Malibu, and Del Mar, but they all rely on a much larger fire authority. And the state law also allows local jurisdictions to adopt local defensible space guidelines, but they must be adopted before December 31st of this year. So generally, defensible space radiates out from your home. And the new guidelines have 3 zones. The closest one is the 0, that's 0 to 5 feet. The next one is 5 to 30 feet. And then the next one is 30 to 100 feet. So I'm going to quickly go through these, but the zone 0, which is closest to our home, is basically there to create firefighter circulation. Our local draft guidelines call for a 30% reduction in tree canopies, plus a 6-foot clearance above roofs or combustible structures, and a maximum of 30% ground cover. A maximum of 30% shrub cover, and you can have ground covers up to 4 inches high. The next zone, which is 5 to 30 feet, also requires a 30% reduction in tree canopies, 30% maximum shrub cover, and 4 inches high in ground covers. And then finally, the lower intensity fuel zone, which very few of us actually have. The one big change is you can have shrub cover up to 50% cover. Otherwise, it's the same. Okay, so I worked with Barbara Metzger and Ann Christoph, and we analyzed the state legislation and our local draft guidelines. And the local draft guidelines raised some questions. And among those is the city began using goat herds in 1990 to create a fire break. And ever since then, the fire break has been extended. And we have spent millions and millions of dollars to do this. And I guess one of our big questions is did CAL FIRE take this into account when they established this very high fire hazard severity zone? And if not, we feel that the local officials need to insist that they do and remap our city. And then another question is, very few of us can truly have defensible space because we are so close together. And where you can't create defensible space, is it really effective on a lot by lot basis? And another question is, have we considered irrigating along the wildland urban interface to provide more fire protection? This is a World Heritage Site in Japan, that is surrounded by forests, and it actually uses water cannons that turn on should there be a fire event. Village Laguna, the local guidelines are much more onerous than the state guidelines when it comes to pruning. The state guidelines refer to trees being well pruned and discusses the importance of preserving and restoring native vegetation and permitting trees near homes for shade and aesthetics and habitat. The local draft guidelines say tree canopies have to be reduced by 30%. We're concerned this is not based on horticultural science. Excuse me. And there's a significant reduction in shade and habitat, and no reference to proper pruning techniques, and no appeal process. So our local guidelines also call for a 30% maximum shrub cover, except in the outer reaches. And that's very unclear. And again, we lose our shade and habitat. We feel the guidelines should consider the importance of proper watering, and they should also consider the fire retardants of many of our plant materials. So finally, we have questions on how do we retain our designation as a historic American landscape. This is an honor that we share with Yosemite and Mount Vernon and Golden Gate State Park. We are also recognized as a tree city. So how do we retain the beauty and the history of our community and still provide fire safety? And there are certain sites that we feel need to be exempt. In particular, Hortense Miller Garden. I'm sure we have other historic sites and learning sites, as well as heritage trees. So in general, Village Laguna strongly supports fire safety, but feel that any program needs to truly be effective while considering the environmental, historical, and quality of life benefits that our landscape provides. We feel the best way to accomplish this is to have a task force made up of fire officials, stakeholders, and local landscape professionals who can work together and find common ground and develop guidelines that truly suit our unique community. So I've provided my email address here. If you would like to send me an email, I have a long written summary of this and more detail and more links that you may be interested. And I'd also like to encourage you, this is going to the City Council on September 21st. We understand the fire department is preparing a report that may be out by the end of this month. And that I'm assuming they're going to make some changes in their draft guidelines. We haven't seen those yet, but I hope you will stay tuned to this because it'll have a tremendous impact on our community. And then, Ann, did you want to take questions?
Oh yes, definitely.
Do you mean Ann Christoph or Ann Kane?
Oh, Ann Kane, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So if people have questions, we would like to hear from. Can you put down your sharing screen so we can see?
Yes.
People? So questions for Meg? Great presentation, Meg. So much information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anne, something?
Yeah, I'd just like to mention that the way this is implemented is going to catch people at very vulnerable moments in their lives, because if you want to sell your property, you no longer probably care what happens to your landscaping and you want to sell the property. And so when the fire department tells you, well, you've got to cut all these things down, or you have to, or in order to close escrow, those people are just going to do it. And it's going to be very unfortunate for our landscape as a whole.
Good point. Thank you. Questions or comments about this? Charlotte, you're muted.
Meg, I've asked this question before, but I don't know that you have the answer. You referred to transference of the property, not sale of the property. Many of us, of course, in Laguna, our properties are free and clear at this stage of our lives. And the chances are we're going to give our homes to our children. Do you know that also means that they have to conform to this severe fire?
Charlotte, I don't have the answer to that specific question on whether the transfer is still, I mean, if that qualifies for having the fire inspection. So I wish I knew. I don't.
Do we have a way to find out?
That's a good question too. I guess we could ask the fire department.
No, they'll immediately write that in.
That's right. So I don't have access to an attorney that might know that, or but yeah, I don't know the answer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So, Rosemary, and you're muted. Okay.
This presentation is going to be posted on YouTube so we can replay. I was going to ask her if she would post it somewhere, like on YouTube or something. So I got to make John watch this. He cares about trees.
So I don't know how to do that, but maybe Ryan does, right?
I guess Ryan will put the meeting on YouTube or something.
Yes.
Right?
The meeting will be posted on YouTube.
Okay, good.
A day or two to do it.
We can recapture it that way. Thanks.
Yes, definitely. It was certainly very informative. Are there questions or comments? Oh, I lost you. Where to go?
Mary.
Thank you.
Hi, Meg, could you just remind me the name of this document, the state document again?
Well, there are a number of pieces of state legislation that went into making the defensible space guidelines.
That's what I need.
And yeah, okay.
Great, thank you.
I have all those pieces of legislation. If you email me, I'll send them to you.
I will.
Karen? Oh, Karen. Oh, Karen.
Hi. It's a real simple question. And I'm just trying to figure out how you figure out 30% reduction of your foliage in a space. I mean, can you tell me how they're going to figure that one out?
Karen, a number of us went to the presentation by the fire department, and that was one of the questions I asked them. 30% of what? I mean, if I prune it every year, does it just get smaller and smaller and smaller? So I hopefully they will answer that.
Thank you, Janet.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. I was just trying to close down a comment. So,
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Questions for Meg? This was a really...
So the target species list is dead?
As far as the defensible space guidelines are concerned, that does not apply to these. As somebody's got their music on.
I know. It's my phone. I'm trying to shut it off.
So the target species are not included in the defensible space guidelines. And I don't know if they're going to put them in at the end, but when they first published the draft guidelines, They were not included. And they actually have taken their draft guidelines off the website. So I'm assuming they're going to be making some changes. Okay, where'd Ann go? Did we lose Ann?
No.
She's there. Ann Kane?
I was trying to shut off my phone because actually they're calling to let me know that
your car
that whatever is expired on my insurance, yada yada. I don't know, but they call so often. Anyway, I apologize. So thank you so much, Meg. Really enjoyed it. And again, it will be on up on YouTube in another day or two for people who'd like to review it or share with others. We're going to move on to David Raber and the initiative here in Laguna Beach. And so if you would like to, as he's talking, if you feel like putting questions into the chat, you can go ahead and do that, and he'll speak to them either during the presentation or when he gets to the end. And then we'll also have some time at the end for other questions. So I'm going to turn it over to David, and thank you so much, David, for being with us.
Great, thanks, appreciate it. So let's see, for the screen sharing, just going to get this started. And there we go. Now, let's see. I guess I need to make this, start the presentation. Okay, so does that come through for everybody?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So it was almost 3 years ago that we started the dialogue. You invited me to speak at the September 17th, 2018 meeting. And we talked about some of the things going on in the city, how Liberate Laguna was contributing $153,504 to elect some city council people. And their agenda was to fast track big development and some things that really were troublesome. So it was that we talked about Laguna being a special case. And what is so special about Laguna? Well, we know it, but you just look, there's only two ways in and out of town, right? Coast Highway and the Canyon Road. So there definitely is something a lot different about our town than most other towns. As Tony would say, visitors already love Laguna to death. So how much more do we have to spend from Laguna resources to attract more? Not any, right? We talked about the Laguna's unique aesthetics, and people like George Dubin are able to say, well, you know, what's charming? There's no definition for charming, which is odd coming from an artist. But at any rate, that's when I started looking at downtown more carefully. And it looked to me that the thing that we're really attracted to is this, you know, the what I call the organic mosaic. The time has been kind to Laguna. Individual decisions were made about individual lots at different times. And the town has evolved, has changed, has met with the times. There's no longer horses riding up and down Forest Avenue like we see in some of the early pictures. In fact, there's part of Forest Avenue, there's no longer cars running up and down. So, you know, so things have changed, and that's all to be expected. But the organic mosaic is something that the Bell Initiative is trying to allow us to maintain this almost intangible. You have to define it somehow if you're going to have regulations about preserving it. So we also have been emphasizing things that are happening in our neighborhood cities. You know, Dana Point, a lot of this is built out now. And a lot of this that you see happening in Dana Point now, it was approved just days before their ballot initiative went into effect. So we can't wait too long to do this kind of thing. So, you know, is there room for constructive change in Laguna Beach? Absolutely. The constructive change will benefit residents, you know, as time marches on, and local merchants. You know, local merchants don't want to be gobbled up by some big block long development, that doesn't benefit them. It's the charm, it's the uniqueness, it's that organic mosaic within Laguna that their business is built on. And it also benefits the existing hospitality industry, not necessarily the new hospitality industry that doesn't exist, but the existing hospitality industry very much depends on Laguna Beach being Laguna. So constructive change, yes, but is there room for intensification? Well, not so much. Intensification would enrich some selected, well-connected current landowners, and we can enumerate them. The people who are going to benefit from this. But it dramatically and permanently alters Laguna in a very negative way for the rest of the people who own property here. Because, we've all bought into Laguna, we paid a premium to be here. And it's part of what it is that made us feel comfortable about that. So we need some predictability for the future. Actually, the rest of the landlords downtown need that same predictability. So I think we're all in the same boat on this, except for a few landlords a few property owners who could stand to really monetize that beauty. So what we did is thought of putting together a ballot initiative to give us some long-term protection. And I'll just take a moment and put a ballot initiative into perspective. Bullet item 4 is a local ballot initiative like we're proposing here, the Laguna Overlay Zone. So just going from top to bottom, the top 3 here are state priorities that, of course, are senior to anything that we put into our ballot initiative. So the state constitution takes precedence over everything. And of course, that is the document that gives all the rest of this justification. It gives the local ballot initiatives. It's the process to which we work under is the local ballot initiative opportunity that is allowed in the California state constitution. Right under that, there are state ballot initiatives, such as Proposition 13, the original Proposition 13. And sure, we elect legislators to go to Sacramento and sit and talk and find ways to spend more money and raise taxes or whatever. But then we could gather together as citizens, we could reserve the right of many parts of government in California and say, we're going to take this part back. And one was the taxes, for example, Proposition 13. Then under that, the next doctrine is, for example, state laws. And right now, for example, the state is taking away the local jurisdictions, number 5 and 6, in allowing ADUs. So this is a state priority. And of course, that would be senior to anything we could do, including the local ballot initiative. But if you take the things that we do have control over here locally, such as enacting local ballot initiatives, and it actually becomes law when we vote on it, that is what we're talking about here with the Laguna, beautiful Laguna Overlay Zone District. Underneath that, then, or subservient to that, would be the local planning documents, such as the downtown specific plan, that would still exist. And of course, the local ordinances, like the height limit. The height limit, by the way, is just a local ordinance. It's not written in stone. It's not part of the state constitution. It's not part of a statewide anything. It's something that our city council voted on. And if they could vote on 36 foot height limit, the downside of that. They could vote on, 45, 50, whatever feet. So that's, again, why the local ballot initiative, oops, sorry about that, is important in that then it can only be changed by another vote of the people. So legal precedence for this, some people ask, well, gee, is that legal or is that fair to do zoning? And, this is something that goes back to the 1600s and the English and then US law of no one wanted a horse glue factory or in the 1700s, a cotton mill right next to their homes. So planning has been done for centuries where we'll put, the homes here, we'll put retail there, we'll put the residential, and then we'll put the factories and the stables and butcher plants and everything else. We'll put them, just organized towns. That is the predictability that actually increases property values, and is what all but the one who wants an exception. There's always somebody who wants an exception. But the property rights are enhanced with published and consistently enforced constraints on compatible usage and apparent standards. And that's what we're going to emphasize here on the ballot initiative. So just the overview of this, we will create this process of getting the signatures on the ballot initiative, and then that will go on the ballot, and the ballot will be voted, and then it becomes part of the law of Laguna Beach that is at a place just above what the city council can modify, in that it would take another vote of the people. So it does not take the place or loosen any of the existing zoning. All that's still in place. The overlay zone does have some protections we'll talk about just on the next slide. And it's only the 750 feet of Coast Highway or Laguna Canyon Road. It's in the most visible and congested parts of town are being protected. And it allows residents to accept or reject large-scale development. So, we'll get from this better proposals. Remember, the montage was put together and enacted by a ballot initiative. So we do have a precedence here in town of considering, debating, arguing, and coming to a conclusion on large-scale development. And I'll tell you, regardless of which side of the issue any of us were on that, the proposal from the developer was much better because they were told up front it would have to go to the people. And that's what we want to do, is bring good proposals to the table that we can all agree on, that this would work, and other stuff wouldn't. So, and the last point here is it gives developers a clearer picture of development opportunities here. There are some things that aren't going to work without them really thinking about it and coming to us as voters. But I think it'll come up with much cleaner proposals, because now, proposals submitted to the Planning Commission, it's just a game of, well, I think, this commissioner will give us that, and I think this commissioner won't be too strict on that. And the proposals are all, submitted with over the Clio Hotel. It was right in there. They're way overstepped on density. And the staff report was that, well, maybe we want to consider changing the density requirements. Not consider changing the proposal, but consider changing the density requirements, which is really the wrong direction, what we want. So I think it'll come back with cleaner proposals once this is in place. Now, the ballot initiative does have exemptions. This is by design. Single-family residential projects, even if they're in, regardless, single-family residents are absolutely off the table. Nothing I'm going to say the rest of the night, and there's only like 4 slides left, are going to affect anything for for single-family residential projects. And also smaller apartment buildings are exempted as well. Now, just because you have like 12 units does not mean that you're going to have to come to the people for a vote. We'll talk about the things that trigger, but these are just the list right off the bat of things that you don't have to worry at all if you fall into any of these categories. Low-income housing is defined by the state. Of course, we can't mess with what the state's doing, nor in this case, are we inclined to. So that is, as defined by the state, that's also exempted, as is K through 12 schools, hospitals, museums, or houses of worship. Repair or replacement of an existing building that has been damaged by, usually call these acts of God, but I think in these days we could call it acts of, of politics and greed. But anyway, anything that fires, earthquakes, things like that are also exempted, as long as it's the original size, placement, and density. And then minor modifications to existing building. Well, what's a minor modification? I want to give you a tool here in 3 slides to let you then look for that definition in the actual ballot initiative. That might be a good exercise Some of you won't want to read through the whole thing. Some of you will be anxious to read through the whole thing. But just as an exercise, go to the third section, which contains the definitions, and see if you can find the definition for minor modification. They're in alphabetical order. Just as kind of an exercise to get into the ballot initiative. Exercise for the intuitive student, as they used to say in college, right? So now these are the triggers. If you didn't meet any of the exceptions, then there are some triggers. One is worsens traffic, and this is adds 200 or more daily trips. Not total. I mean, total, you already could be producing, 400 daily trips. And if you just remodel a little bit, you probably wouldn't add any more. And by the way, Costa Mesa has 100. But you get a lot of people each adding 200 more trips. And while you go back to that slide at the beginning where it's gridlock, and how many more of those can the town really take? And people say, well, someday, and the second one too, this is less parking, that if you're going to provide less parking that was required today. That's what proposed in the new downtown specific plan, but what is actually in effect today on the books, then that will be a trigger. People say, well, someday everyone will be Ubering. I don't know, Uber rates are going up a lot. I see people actually Ubering less, but when that happens, or self-driving cars that park themselves, that happens, great. We'll be a lot more tolerant for proposals that would come to us with asking for big exemptions here than we are in those old hectic days of 2021 when you still, 99% of the people downtown drove there, right? Another trigger is larger than 22,000 square feet of floor space. So something like Pottery Shack would be okay. This is a floor space. Does that include parking? Floor space is a definition that's in the legal genre. So it includes actual, the retail space if you're a retailer, or floor space. The combination of large lots, something like what Hobie Sport did to the building next door, that is permitted because that lot wasn't large enough to fall into the trigger. There's a definition of what's too large. But basically 2 or 3 lots downtown could be combined together. And then if there's like a little 1,000-foot section or something just needs to be cleaned up, that's good stuff too. So what Hobie Sports did is taking the building, adjoining it, kept the historicity of those buildings, and that works out well. If you're Mo and bought, as he says, 7 different lots and 7 different transactions. This is the museum hotel project. And want to combine all those, then we have a problem. And then you're going to have to come back to the people to justify it, because that's the thing. You do enough of those and you don't have the organic mosaic anymore. You have downtown Disney, and downtown Disney tries to irrigate, to have some variation from one little building to another, but they all came off the same drawing board. You can just tell it, you can feel it. It's not Laguna, it's downtown Disney. And that's the type of thing, combining large lots and putting it under single control, that we want to avoid. And then taller than is currently permitted. 36 feet overall, but there are a lot of parts in this overlay zone that do not even allow 36 feet. You put 36-foot buildings on Forest Avenue, and it would be a whole different Forest Avenue. It just, it'd be horrible. So what we did in the ballot initiative, there's about 2.5 pages just of the current height limitations that had to be copied into the ballot initiative because it has to be standalone. And it takes the current limitations that are currently on the books. And then finally, the last one is cumulative effect. So basically, if you have 4 times the maximum of all of these within a half-mile radius within 8 years, that's like, enough's enough. There's only so much we could stand. And that's the cumulative effect one. And these are all defined in the ballot initiative. So again, an exercise for the intuitive student is go through and these are actually in section 4, but we'll talk about that. Now, take a look at the ballot initiative. We're just about ready to wrap it up here. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you by any means. But take a look at the Laguna Residents First website. So you can see that up in the URL bar there, lagunaresidentsfirst.org. And then under that, you see the main menu, take ballot initiative. So navigate to lagunaresidentsfirst.org, select the ballot initiative menu option, and then read the summary. So here's what you get when you're at the ballot initiative. There's a web page on just the summary. If you're not going to read the whole ballot initiative, no problem. But this is just a few paragraphs. It has an overview. It has the purpose of why we're doing this. And then it has the large scale development defined a little bit more than what we have here. And then down below here, you see the hyperlinks. You see there the first one, the ballot initiative document. That'll actually bring up the ballot initiative document so you can read it. That's what will become law. That'll be on the law books. When this is passed, you could look at the city website. You can look under the ordinances, and you can see section 60.25, and there will be the wording, the exact same wording that you'll be signing when you sign the ballot initiative. There's also frequently asked questions link here. That's 3 pages, less than 3 pages of frequently asked questions. So maybe get your questions answered there. And then the official notice of intent, that's something that I wrote. Then the title and summary is what Phil, the city attorney, came back with. And actually, you know, the title and summary are pretty well done. So you can read that as well. They're all here for you and everyone else in town to read. And as you have the signature, have the signature gathering packet in front of you, you'll have the full ballot initiative if you want to read through it. You also have the title and summary to read through, or the intent, title, and summary. So what's the next steps for the ballot initiative? We need to collect around 2,400 signatures of registered voters. You know, some will be thrown out because they didn't quite, they meant to register to vote, but they didn't, or they didn't sign it the way they did. The DMV, the way you signed it on your driver's license is the way you need to sign the ballot initiative. Just remember that, because there is a process to check that. And then, that you signed the ballot initiative will be confidential. I mean, the person that comes to gather your signature, they will know you and have to certify they actually talk to you. But beyond that, it is confidential. The opponents cannot look at who signed. We'll be submitting the petition to the city clerk. The petitions and the signatures do not become public record. And if we have enough valid signatures, it'll go on the 2022 election. And then we'll have to campaign for this. You know, it's not like it just happened just because we gathered the signatures. It'll be a campaign. You know the drill when you have these state campaigns. We're not going to buy, you know, ads on TV and ads on radio. In fact, we'll depend on many of you and others that you can gather who are going to collect the signatures to go back through the city and remind people to vote for the ballot initiative. So that whole volunteering, the grassroots effort is really important on this. We're off to a good start on that, but we do need that. And one last slide here. Oh, we'll win the election, of course, so it becomes law. That's the last step for it. But this is the takeaways. At least read the summary. Go to the website, lagunaresidentsfirst.org, read the summary, ask questions. You know, and if any of this doesn't make sense to you, or you really have doubts about it, and you want to understand what was on our mind, please give me a call. It's David Raber. You can email me, david@raber.us. How easy is that? And my phone, I'll give you my phone. Get a pen and I'll write down my cell phone number, 949-300-7424, 949-300-7424, and ask, and I'll take the time, and we'll all work on this together. Because I appreciate your support, and I want you to at least understand the reasons behind some things. There is a balance between protecting every single thing that could go wrong in the city, and including the things that are popular enough that they'll reach general support. And we think we have that right balance. We want to explain that to you if you have any questions. Then the next thing is we need the support of you and your neighbors. So you'll be the most effective at getting to them. TV ads won't touch what you can do for your neighbors and friends. And then we would like you to sign up to collect signatures in your neighborhood. If you go to the LagunaResidenceFirst.org website, has a spot to volunteer. And they're also considering donating. We are going to have to run some ads, local ads in the paper. There's printing. These initiative packets have to have the whole ballot initiative in it. So there's printing costs. And there were legal fees because we actually have a very good lawyer that is familiar with doing this in other Southern California cities. And we feel very, very fortunate to have had her working on this with us. So that's all I have, I guess, questions. I'll stop the screen sharing now. And we can just talk if anybody has a question. Or
Thank you, David. We really appreciate that explanation. 2,400 signatures seems like a lot. What is that percentage of residents? How is that a lot?
Well, it's the like 15% of the voters, and it doesn't need that many. But we've been advised that things happen when you're gathering signatures. The opposition may be told to, every time they see one of our tables, to do some signatures, Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck signatures, just to have some invalid signatures on there. So we do have to be, and people sometimes don't sign close enough to what they did on the driver's license. So there will be some rejected, and we don't want that to happen.
Thank you, Meg.
Yeah, I have my question is, if the ballot initiative is challenged in court, once it passes, is there a stay on any development that's approved and until that's sorted out?
Okay, two things, actually three in that question, is that when the voters pass this ballot initiative, as long as we get a majority, it becomes law. And then it's the city's responsibility to defend their laws, and this becomes a city law. So it'll be up to the city to defend it. Any of us could sue the city or join with the court if we feel it's not being defended properly, but it is the city's responsibility to defend it. And as such, it would be doubtful that a city attorney would want to place themselves in a position where they are knowingly going to violate, or where there's a court case outstanding. It would be up to them, like granting the seawall on what was a remodel on the coast a while back, and there's some consequences to that. So I hope the city's cautious on that. But it's a free country; anybody can sue anybody. So.
Okay, other questions? Chris.
Oh, Chris, we can't hear you. You're still muted.
Still mute. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I've been muted. Another reason that we're going for 2,400 or so signatures, although we only need about 1,750 net, but it turns out that anyone that signs the ballot initiative can withdraw their name prior to us turning it over to the city clerk. So you can see some mischief could be done there.
Ah, good point. Thank you.
So what are you
Johanna?
And there are two hands up, Janet Walters and George Weiss. Do you see the mechanical hands?
I do not. I see you, Johanna. I don't see.
Well, they're mechanical hands.
All right, so
Okay.
you call on them.
Janet Walters and George have mechanical hands up.
Thank you.
Okay, Janet, then you were first.
I'm sorry if I had that. I just thought I was muting myself, so no question for me.
Okay, so George, you had your hand up.
Yeah, and I know the answer to this, but I think it's useful for everyone to hear it. How did we come up with the 22,000 square feet and provide an explanation for that, David?
Yeah, the 22,000. Yeah, I think we covered that briefly. It's that
you did. Okay.
We looked at buildings in town, and something like Pottery Shack would be acceptable. And something like either the Clio or the Museum Hotel, or even if the Hotel of Laguna was to be rebuilt, which it isn't, those would have to be, if the Hotel Laguna Twin was going to be built next to it, if the city sold a Main Beach, they're going to put something that big, that would definitely not, they'd have to come back to us for that. So, low scale things, and the Powder Shack could be an example of that, but that would be fine.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments?
Yeah.
Councilor Charlotte?
Yes, David, I might have missed this. So is there somebody who's going to overall head up this gathering of signatures? And when are you going to start it? And can you give me some ideas about that?
Sure. Chris is going to actually be running that part of the signature gathering. And we've already done training sessions, and we're going to have more. So if you're interested, it is not too late at all.
Okay. And so have you started gathering signatures yet?
Yes.
Oh, you have? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I just want to make a comment about that. There's two ways, canvassing and sitting at a site, which Gene Felder will be heading up.
Yeah, let's see. Any other hands up? Gene. By the way, Gene's our treasurer, and Chris is also on the board too. And George and I were co-founders of that. So I don't see anybody else.
I've always been proud of Laguna Beach being in the forefront in leadership and so forth. But on this issue, aren't we behind other cities?
Yes, good point. Newport Beach had to take matters into their own hands several times because of the developers having that as a fairly early target. Costa Mesa, same thing. Dana Point, in Irvine, there's a movement that we have talked to. There's Marina Del Rey, and they consider themselves being too late because Marina Del Rey has just made a total mess of what it was originally envisioned. And then the attorney that we work with has a practice specializing in other cities that are doing similar. So we're not by any means the only city that's doing this. The whole thing about the high level, what doesn't make sense for the residents or the merchants, or visitors even. It doesn't make, further intensification doesn't make sense for the visitors either. That is something that has often been taken back by the residents, as the California Constitution allows, to add some clarity to that whole process. Too easy by city council. Let's see, anybody else have their hand up? Let me go down on the next page here and see who might be. Well, you have my number and you have my email, and you could also go to the website and leave questions there. And
David, did you get any comments on the chat video or chat, whatever that is?
Let's see. Were they been mailed to me? I don't see anything on that.
Okay, so those were all live questions, and that's fine.
Just raise your hand now, and we'll take care of it now. And Janet, you don't have your hand up. Oh, you have your hand up, but you didn't. There we go.
Yeah,
okay.
I think she's trying to mute.
Thank you.
Johanna?
Johanna?
Well, I'm just reading the chat here, and they're reminding us about the community summit. Anybody want to talk about that?
So there is one plan. We don't, Meryl, do you want to talk about that?
Well, sure. Yes. As this comment points out, the first community summit had over 200 people, and 10 local community organizations sort of came together and in consensus and unity in terms of three major themes around heritage, environment, and overdevelopment. And the consensus was that there was kind of the root to this was overdevelopment. And then after this summit, there was a follow-up of those who signed up to provide some extra ideas and provide some extra help to move this forward. And then from that came a smaller group of about a dozen people who met several times and put together basically this ballot initiative that David Raber has kind of taken on and headed up. And I must say, it's a beautifully written ballot initiative. It really gets to the point and really gets to the nexus, the real sort of underlying threat that faces our community, and that is projects like the so-called Museum Hotel, which also became known as the Wall to others who saw the plans and the staking on Coast Highway. And so we, as sort of Gene and David pointed out, are kind of a little later to this party than some of our coastal neighbors, but it's really important that we do this, and that also we really come together as a community. I think one of the lessons that at least I've learned, I think others have as well, is that a city council member can do a tremendous amount of damage in 3 or 4 years. And we can't just rely on the city council to do the right thing. They are either inept or corrupt or both. I'm not sure where they are in that. I think we need a clean accounting of that. But in the meantime, we need to get this ballot initiative made law next year. So it gives us some buttress against the ineptness and the corruption that we seem to be having in city council.
Yeah.
Thank you, Meryl.
Good. There are 2 questions that came in on the chat. The ballot initiative will go into effect once it's voted, and then if somebody wants to challenge it, a developer then would be taking that to court. But nothing, the city couldn't disregard their own law at that point. So until it's resolved, then the law is the law until some judge tells them otherwise. The other question was about just because you sign the ballot initiative to put it on the ballot, that does not automatically mean that you have just voted for it, nor does it mean you have to vote for it. That's a whole separate thing. Putting it on the ballot, I think, is one show of strength of what the residents are serious about taking this important part of the city's future into a different place than just being buffeted around at city council agendas and exceptions here and turning a blind eye there. Voting for it then would be to that the majority of us actually want this to be the law of Laguna Beach, which I sincerely hope, and with everyone's help, if all of us here can contact a few people, gather some signatures, and then gather some votes when the time comes, we'll have it done. Ann, you raised your hand.
Yes, I think maybe someone was asking, are we going to have another summit meeting? And I know that there's been people getting together to try to plan that. So can you give us an update on that?
Yes, we had originally planned to have an in-person summit next month. And with sort of the rise of COVID considerations and so forth, we thought it was kind of ill-advised, maybe ill-timed. So we're going to have a Zoom summit or summits. And there's a subset of Village Laguna that's going to meet Wednesday evening via Zoom, and then sort out how we want to proceed. And then from that, we'll communicate this to everyone and encourage everyone to attend. However, it's most likely that we will continue with the same 3 themes of heritage, environment, and overdevelopment, and also have some kind of interactive aspect to it. We won't have kind of the energy, the excitement that we had from in person. However, I think we can achieve our objectives of really coming together, again, having consensus and agreement on how best to move forward.
Thank you, Meryl. And I was going to have 2 comments. One, when they were, I was at a location where they were collecting signatures to recall Gavin Newsom. And one of the things people kept saying to me is, well, go ahead and sign. You don't have to vote for it, which I found very amusing. And the other thing I was going to say, there's some very energetic people at the farmers market right now looking to recall him, as well as to vote no. And I'm wondering if we should hold off trying to gather signatures there until after the recall election, so that we're not conflicting. Perhaps just work in our neighborhoods or something, and then go full out at farmers market.
Well, that's a good point. We'll have to take things like that into consideration. Chris has some people who, well, you're part of that. Let's take that offline in consideration. We do have a limited time to collect the signatures. We have probably 5 months left to gather signatures. So there's urgency to get that done. We'd love to get it turned in early and get on to the next phase. So thanks, everyone. Really appreciate your support in this over the years. Thanks for inviting me 3 years ago to kind of start this concern rolling, and then gathering what we do about it, and putting this together. And now we can take the next step together. Thank you so much.
So before we close out, I see a couple hands. Janet, is your hand up?
Not again.
We are clapping.
No, Janet Waters.
I'm not really Janet Walters. I'm Joan McFarland.
Yes, thank you, Joan.
I know, but we use our cross-cultural council Zoom account occasionally, and I teach ESL over Zoom over all this past year. So forgive me for using the Zoom account, but yeah, it's me.
Thank you, Joan.
I don't think she knows
All right.
your hand.
I was confused. Your name and face didn't really go together.
I know.
But
Forgive
then
me.
I have Ryan's name on mine, so we're all confused. Anybody else with a last minute comment? This has been just a fabulous meeting. I really appreciate everybody's interest, and our 2 presenters were super fabulous. Thank you so much. Good to have the comments from Tony, and please attend the city council meeting tomorrow night.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks, Meryl. Thanks for organizing it.
Good night.
Good night.
Everybody, thank you.